Okay.
Just waiting for Curtis to give us a thumbs up.
All right, we're good to go.
Great. Thank you, Curtis. Welcome everybody to the Building Use and Visioning Committee September 30th meeting. It's our first meeting of the 25-26 school year. Thank you all for being here. So let's go ahead. We had an agenda set out last week, so I'll be looking for a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, great. Also, thank you for linking the minutes to our last meeting, which was March 11th. Did not seem that long ago. But I'll be looking for a motion to approve the minutes of March 11, 2025.
I'll make that motion too.
We have a second?
I'll second.
Great. Thanks, Steve. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Next on the agenda, we need to designate a recording secretary for the meeting. Mike, how does this usually work? I don't recall us doing this last.
We usually have somebody who takes the minutes. It's just to formalize who's doing that.
I'm terrible at that. That's my excuse.
I
Emily
can-
looks like she's really
Emily,
good.
is that yes, Emily? I got it.
Emily is so good at no. No.
You know what? I'm not on the committee, so I'll do it.
Thank you, Steve.
I appreciate that, sir. Always wonderful.
too.
Okay, well, Steve Rosenberg will be the recording secretary for the meeting. For the board members present, we have Ashley Woods, the chair. Myself, JB Weir. We have Steve Rosenberg from Moortown. And we have Emily Doloff as well from Duxbury, right? Yeah. I don't see Cindy here. Is that right?
She might be coming, but carry on. I'm
Okay.
going to text her right now to make sure
Okay.
she knows how to do that.
And then we have Dr. Mike, Ray Daigle, our maintenance, Lisa Essler, our CFO, and then members of the public, we have Cam, David, and Caleb from Truex. Thanks a lot, guys, for taking the time again to join us. And I'm going to see here. I can't see.
It looks like 8 members of the public, including our reporter from the Waterbury Roundabout.
Okay.
So we have basically 7 members of the public plus the press.
Okay. Sounds good. Great. Okay. So we're gonna open up public comment for the next 15 minutes or so. If members of the public wish to speak, I'm just gonna add if there are any. I do have the meeting is going to go to 7:30. I do have a hard stop right around then. I am single parenting this week, and I need to get to Waterbury to pick up my daughter. So, but I think we can do it. I think we can stick to the agenda even if we're a couple minutes late. So, I guess yes, I'd like to open it up to the public and see if they had any sort of comments before the meeting gets going.
So if you have any comments, just raise your virtual hand and we will promote you to a panelist and recognize you. So we have Beth, Catherine Naden, Haley Mango, Langford Davidson, Mish Berenz, who's a teacher at Moortown, Nicole Angel, and Sparty. And JB, I'm not seeing any hands raised.
Great. Okay, well, that's good. I'm sure we'll have more questions. I think we received this report last week. It's very detailed, and I think it's a great body of work from Truex. I think we're kind of here this evening to go over it with Truex's lens on to see how it came to be, what they put into it, and what we're gonna our next steps after that. So I'm sure we'll all have lots of questions at upcoming meetings. So I appreciate the public being here and urge them all to continue to come to these meetings because we know questions will arise. So great. Well, with that, let's get into the meat of the meeting, and that's reviewing and discussing the facilities assessments with a presentation by Truex Collins, and I'll give you guys the floor.
Great. Thanks. Hi, everyone. Caleb's going to walk us through the presentation. The and you can stop at any time. The process was that we assembled a team of engineers. We visited the schools. Each engineer wrote their report for the areas they were responsible for, and we'll be releasing a full written report that will have even more detail than what you see tonight. So if you ever have trouble sleeping, um, this is a great document. No, it's really full of information. But I just want to remind everybody, it's a snapshot in time. Um, you know, there might be work done tomorrow or this summer or whatever that, you know, is on the list here. Sometimes things arise that aren't on in the report. So, bear that in mind. The dollar amounts. So what we've done is in the report, there's each item is described, then its condition is described, and then there's a recommendation for if there's any upgrades required. And what we're looking for is what we generically say, these are the things that would modernize the building. And there's three categories. There's priority 1 and 2 and 3, and Caleb will go into that in more detail. But we're looking at a wide range of things from code compliance, accessibility, building condition, deferred maintenance, aging equipment, the full gamut, and happy to take you through it. So Caleb, do you want to share your screen?
And David, could I ask you, so my experience has been to go through this process as part of a grand overall master planning process. So could you explain in an ideal world how this would fit into both a school district facility master plan and then subsequently a school master plan and construction project?
Yeah, so this it's pretty comprehensive, and it's an important part of planning for the future, because you want to know what um, what the deferred maintenance is on the projects, and it establishes a baseline. Often, school district will say, well, if you get into like modification of a building, they'll want to know, well, what would it just cost to fix the building that we have? And that's what this gives you. This is just, there's no, the numbers you see don't include moving any walls or changing any configurations. Just here's what you have, and here's what it takes um, to bring it up to a modern standard in terms of performance and newer equipment, so that you're and so what happens is when you do a major facilities project, um, you may not decide to do all of it. You may decide to do some of it, and the rest of it would go into a capital improvement plan. So you would say, okay, we're not going to do the windows now, but we're going to do them in 5 years or 10 years, and then you can start scheduling out and create a plan for taking care of the buildings over the long term. Um, One of the reasons it's important is that when you do the facility, like we were just working on a project in another school district, and there was one wing that was needed a complete um, gut renovation. And when we did the master planning, it turns out they wanted to reconfigure how their classrooms were set up. So it became an ideal, well, it doesn't really cost much more if you're going to go to that level of you have that level of deferred maintenance to move some walls around and get what you really want. So it helps you optimize your solutions and your investments.
Great, thank you.
Everyone see my screen?
There it is.
Yes.
Okay, so this is kind of a breakdown of our project team. Rex Collins as the architect and team leader. Our list of consultants: civil engineering, engineering ventures, structural engineering, also engineering ventures. Our electrical, mechanical, and plumbing engineers, all from Engineering Services of Vermont. And their cost estimation team was PM&C of Massachusetts. So yeah, David kind of described what the initial process was. We took over the course of 3 days, we visited the schools and kind of jotted down all of our observations that we would then take back to the office in order to put down our recommendations for modernization of the schools. Some key terms that we'll need to know as we go through this report. A list of priorities. You'll see that the lists of items will be broken up into one of 3 priorities. Priority one being items related to health, safety, welfare, or code. Priority 2, which are items that are at the end of their useful life or expected lifespan, or upgrades that will be significant, say, for energy savings. And then priority 3 is any priorities that don't really fit into those 2 categories, but could help improve maybe functionality of the school. FCI, you'll see, is FCI stands for the Facility Condition Index, and it's a ratio of deferred maintenance over current replacement value, and it gives you a percentage overall, basically what's left of the building. And then, so to explain these FCIs, 0 to 5, new or well-maintained condition, little or no evidence of wear or deficiencies. 5 through 10 would be subject to wear, but still in serviceable condition. And then 10 through 30, subject to hard long-term wear, nearing end of its useful life. And then 30 or above, it's recommended that it's basically that it's reached its end of its useful life, and it's now renewal is now necessary. And this came from the Vermont Education Act 72 facilities assessment. So that's where we get this information of how they're classifying these FCI numbers, basically for the whole entire state. And so kind of a quick breakthrough, just a snapshot for the schools that we visited: Brookside, Crossett Brook, Fayston, Moortown, Waitsfield, Warren. We didn't, as part of this investigation, we did not visit Harwood. I think this was done a few years prior. So you won't see any of that information in this report. But this gives you kind of just a breakdown of what grades go to these schools, number of students, building size. I think one thing to note is just the average years, or how many years it's been since the last major renovation in some of these schools. An average of 23 years. So. And this is kind of a snapshot of overall how the cost estimate came back. We'll get kind of more into detail with these numbers, but you can see kind of the FCI Facility Conditions Index here on the right. Few schools kind of reaching that 30% range, Fayston being quite a bit over, and then some within 17% range. But then you can see that the cost estimate came back as, say, 48 million. Basically, if we were to pair everything that we found wrong with the schools, and then this is a number that basically taking an estimate per square foot cost for a new construction build would be about 200 million to replace all of the buildings. And so you take those and divide it, and you end up with a 24% overall FCI. We'll get right into it. Starting with Brookside School. So yeah, grades pre-K through fourth grade, 345 students, approximately 76,000 square foot building sitting on a 10-acre lot. The kind of originally built in 3 sections, kind of this central area built in the 1900, and then two additional wings in 1912 and 1937. And then the most recent addition being 2007, where kind of these connectors between these 3 areas. And so priority 1 items that we have established for architectural, there's some exterior windows that have areas of rot. You can see this photo here at the bottom. It's kind of rotting right through the style. Doorknobs really should be replaced with lever hardware, just they're not ADA accessible. There's a lot of wired glass in either door vision lights or borrowed lights, which would be like a side light to an interior door. That's no longer allowed by code. It's just a safety hazard. A lot of exposed P-traps at restroom vanities. Classroom doors do not have door closers, which is required by code now. They really should have closers, and then doors could be held open on magnetic hold opens. You can see in this photo here some egress handrails that really aren't up to code, just with dimension, with their other reconfigured. It really should have a return on all the handrails. And then some ADA issues, clearances at kind of different doors throughout the office areas. Plumbing fixtures at classrooms are not accessible. They don't have the right clearances around. So let's say like the casework sinks. One ramp at the kind of that goes down to the basement area is too steep. Electrical issues, automatic transfer switch is not properly secured. Some open electrical boxes found in the attic spaces. And you'll see a lot of these electrical ones are actually fairly consistent between schools. Plug strips used as permanent wiring, which should not be. Tamper-proof receptacles, any new receptacles by code now really have to be tamper-proof in an education building. GFCI receptacles not labeled correctly.
It's worth noting that, the codes have changed. So this building was designed and it met the codes, and now the codes have changed. In the case of like handrails and things, you have a certificate of occupancy and you're grandfathered in. But sometimes when you do major work to a building, that sort of triggers code compliance and across a wider spectrum of issues that even you might have originally anticipated. So anyway, it's just something to be considered. It's not when we're talking about some of these code issues, it was designed and it met code at the time, and the codes have changed over the time.
How was your day? I didn't even ask. What was your day?
A few more additional priority 1 items. For mechanical and plumbing, the kitchen hood is not UL listed, or it really needs a fire suppression system by code. And then sprinkler heads should be tested, inspected. Some structural items, some concrete piers kind of along that back gym area, had some cracked sonotubes here. Exterior concrete stairs and handrails, and I think this work was completed. Ray had brought that up to us. Forgot to delete that. Exterior walkway support steel, kind of in the back of the school. There's a couple of steel beams that are temporarily supported and have some significant deterioration here. You can see in this image on the right. Some civil items. Really should add some signage and pavement markings to help direct traffic just for public safety. And then some trimming of vegetation at entry drives just to increase visibility. And then there's some areas of sidewalks that have settling panels that just don't meet code. based on you can only have a 1/2 inch of drop in order to meet ADA code. Some priority 2 items for Brookside. And you'll see that the majority of the items will be in this kind of priority 2 list with items that are just deteriorating and kind of are at their end of useful life. So you'll kind of notice that as we go through. So architecturally, the envelope just based on building the date that it was built, it does not meet energy code to current standards. There's some areas of standing seam metal roofing at the gym area, kind of at the back storage area that's rusted and really should be replaced. Exterior wood doors that are here to be original, they're in pretty poor condition. Some exterior hull metal doors and frames that have rusting at the bases. You see in this image on the right, some rotted post spaces at the entry columns should be replaced or repaired. Peeling paint, exterior wood trim, damaged fiber cement paneling here, these connector areas. VTC flooring, which is cracked or separating at joints. Wood flooring that's worn and should be refinished just to help protect that flooring. Areas of casework that is worn and or not ADA accessible, and then areas of damaged ceiling tiles. For electrical, fluorescent, I think majority of these schools have been relamped, but there are still some areas of fluorescent lighting. Some mechanical and plumbing items. The boilers at the school are close to their end of their life. The fuel oil tank.
Hi.
Hi, sorry to interrupt, Caleb. I just wanted to remind everybody that the presentation was included in the warrant agenda, and I think for the sake of time and allowing some questions from the committee and other members here at the meeting, that we maybe move through this a little bit quicker. I don't mean it's all important stuff.
Yeah, I can.
But the present, I think the report, the initial report here speaks for itself. So maybe just going over some of the more highlights.
Okay, I can do the major items for sure. Let's see. I think structurally, there's a couple areas at the school where you can see these window sills have kind of become displaced. And I think overall, this building should be repointed. Just you see some of this brick here that is deteriorating just because of the age of the mortar. And once the mortar kind of goes bad, it then affects the brick. So I think just to help protect the brick itself. And then priority 3 items. This will be kind of similar for all of them. Let's see. Kind of minor structural cracking that's not really necessary to kind of move on right now, but should be monitored. And then kind of just a breakdown of the cost here. 16 million worth of repairs here at Brookside with an FCI of 26. Moving on to Crosset Brook, originally built in 1996 and really hasn't had a ton of work done since then. Let's see, some major items here. There's some soffit damage to the library that really should be taken a look at, just because it could be affected from maybe a roof leak. A lot of very similar electrical items here. Structurally, there's some rusting at the entry columns that should be refurbished before they get too far gone. And some spalling concrete at these entry steps. And then some major potholes in the pavement. It's just a safety hazard. Once again, the envelope doesn't meet energy code. A lot of very similar items throughout these schools, just based on how they've been renovated over the years. Need new boilers, should have a new oil tank. Water valves and piping specialties are at the end of their life. See, yeah, for Crosset Brook, it was a $10 million cost estimate, 17% FCI, which is the lowest of all the schools, which makes sense just being the newest school.
Yeah, it's worth noting that the FCIs in this district quite a bit lower than in other districts, which I say kudos to Ray and the whole team in terms of taking care of the buildings. We were, it caused us to dig a little bit deeper and to make sure that our numbers were accurate. We double checked them with Ray, and so, but having them all be, except for Facein, under 30 in Vermont is on the low side, even though it's significant. When you're at 25% FCI, that means 25% of the building is depreciated and needs renewal. So it's not insignificant, but not as bad as some other districts. So kudos to you folks.
A lot
the
of
same
kudos
time-
to Ray and his amazing work. Emily, I do see you raise your hand. I think what we'll do is want to get Truex time to get through this presentation, and maybe we'll shoot to save about 10 to 15 minutes if we can, maybe a little after 7 o'clock for any questions from the members. Okay, thanks.
And I don't mean to be sobering, but although this district has some buildings that are in better shape than others we have visited around the state, if you go back at some point and look at the slide on FCI, 30% FCI is considered critical. And, many institutional organizations like universities or the military will consider replacement at a FCI of 40 or 50%. So just take that with a grain of salt. Yes, people have done a good job and you're ahead of the curve, but there's still a lot of work to be done.
Thank you. Moving on to Facein, originally built in 1962, and this building has kind of had a bunch of different smaller additions over the years. Some major items here. Let's see, yeah, some more a lot of wired glass at the school as well. Exterior windows kind of not having proper flashing, which can lead to issues with moisture getting into the walls. Entry column post bases, which are rusting. This wooden site wall that we saw while on site has kind of collapsed, or is collapsing. The fire alarm system for this school is one of the major items. The system's no longer manufactured, so replacement parts will be hard to find if something were to go wrong. So it's recommended to replace this system. Again, the kitchen hood should be replaced to a code compliant system. For Facein, the envelope really, it doesn't meet energy code and doesn't have a proper air barrier system. The exterior siding really isn't in the greatest shape. It's definitely pretty worn. Some of the standing seam metal roofing should be replaced. And then some of the older era aluminum windows should also be replaced, kind of past their end of useful life. Some damaged kind of EFIS siding material at the gym walls, and then you're both kind of flooring issues and ceiling issues. We also have central HRV units should be replaced or at the end of their useful life, and then unit ventilators to classrooms are also at the end of useful life. Some minor structural cracking that should be monitored. That's priority 3. And so overall at Facein, it was a $7 million cost estimate. But being a smaller school, it's only 15 million for replacement, so the FCI of 49%. For Moortown School, originally built, there was a kind of the front area built in 1900, and then a couple of different additions, kind of 1960, 1996, which added a majority of the school as it sits today. Some priority one items, once again, handrails. There's some egress issues, kind of locations of the drinking fountains a little bit dangerous if someone's opening that door. And then just maneuvering clearances as far as getting into classrooms with a wheelchair, not accessible. Some of the priority two items, some rotting siding damaged trim, kind of at this older era building. Some original wood doors that really should be replaced just for their shape and also just for energy efficiency. Yeah. Elemental doors that are rusting, a lot of similar things. For this school, the electrical equipment is actually nearing the end of its useful life, so that's a pretty good cost for this school. And then, yeah, mechanical unit ventilators are at the end of their useful life as well. So yeah, Moortown came in at 4.8 million, 27% FCI. Waitsfield, built in 1963 with a few different additions. The most recent renovation, I guess, was the kitchen in 23. So priority one items here. Classroom doors without door closers, a lot of wired glass. A few electrical code issues that should be revised. Just how the wiring is routed. There was a few classrooms in this school that were noted to have just low lighting levels. And then fire alarm signal coverage wasn't quite adequate. There should be a few more additional fixtures put into the school. Architecturally, a lot of the same items. Envelope isn't quite up to energy code for the whole building. Areas of displaced mortar at the brick. I think some of this work had been completed this summer. Some of the wood entry posts and trim at the main entry. And then some flooring, ceilings in poor condition. Interior wood doors have delamination. And then circuit breaker panels at the original area of this building should be replaced or at their useful life. Boiler should be replaced, unit ventilator should be replaced. And then the 1963 domestic water piping has had several failures, so it really should be replaced as well before it becomes an issue any further. Couple structural issues of an unsupported CMU. And so overall, the school came in at an estimate of 4.8 million for repairs with a 24% FCI. And then Warren.
So if you don't mind, if I jump in just real quick, Caleb, I just have to say, and I appreciate all your comments too, and the other architects. I just spent 2 days at the Warren School, and when you look at the pictures, you're not seeing teachers, you're not seeing kids. And having spent 2 days at this school, like all of our other schools, the school is about teachers, it's about students, it's about instruction. And I have to say, from working in 3 school systems, that our schools are some of the most caring places I've worked in. So when you see the pictures and you see the issues, I just ask that people watching remember that schools are not just brick and mortar. You know, schools are about how we treat each other, how we treat students, how we educate our students, but they're an important part of that equation. So I think it was Cam who said, you know, when you pull up to a school and you look at the building and you're dropping your child off or you're coming in for a meet the teacher night, you don't see these things, but they are part of the equation and they're part of the infrastructure. So I think when you look at these pictures, you think, oh, I kind of saw that. I didn't really notice that in the whole and the needs that are there. But I just want to remind people that this is just part of that full discussion and something to keep in mind as we talk, not just in Harwood, but across the state about the condition of our buildings, that we're not commenting on anything about education because, in my opinion, education we're providing in many of our school and most of our schools and all of our schools are second to none. But these are things that keep the work going. Last week, we had an issue with some rain and some water in one of the roofs in Brookside. And I think this is just making sure that our buildings are maintained in a way that helps us and helps our teachers provide a quality education for our students. So I know I'm rambling on a bit, but when I see the pictures, I have to stop a moment and realize that this is not connected to our overall mission. It's just connected to kind of the infrastructure of our schools.
Thanks, Mike. I was thinking the same. That's very important. Appreciate that.
Thanks, Mike. So yeah, lastly, Warren, built in 1971, a few different additions over the years. And this school actually overall was renovated in 2017 for a deep, I guess, retrofit for the exterior, bringing that up to energy code. Some priority 1 items. Let's see. Yeah, you can see wired glass at doors, door hardware, just accessibility issues with doorknobs. This one structural crack at the level 1 or level 2 floor slab, level 1 floor slab that should be investigated. And I think one of the bigger issues here was the fire pump room really should be in its own 1-hour enclosed room. And then the pump itself really isn't accessible. Doesn't have the correct clearances. That should be revised.
And again, other than Ray, Skip, myself, and the fire inspector, I don't think anyone has ever seen this piece, but it's an important part of, again, keeping in mind that we got to keep our buildings running for students.
See. And then, so priority 2 items. Yeah, overall, the exterior was in pretty great shape. A little bit, some areas where there's some kind of typical maintenance issues with some damage at corner trim, some cleaning that needs to be done, some kind of routine maintenance things. Some areas of flooring that kind of were in rough shape in some of the restrooms. Gym wall padding was in poor condition, and some casework that's really in poor condition. You can see here in these images. Boilers at the end of their useful life. And then the gym HRU in this building is really undersized for the school. And then some priority 3 items here. You can see kind of these acoustical panels that are kind of stained. Not really priority, but could help up the appearance of the school. Some kind of light structural cracking. So this school came in at just over 4 million for repairs with an FCI of 18.
It's worth mentioning that these numbers are stated in 2027 numbers. So we've escalated them at 4% a year from today's to 2027, so that, because the likelihood of, getting any of this work done is probably not for a couple of years. So we didn't want to state it in today's dollars and have you be surprised when you start to do the work, it costs more. But it could be, we just wanted you to be aware of that.
I don't know, Ashley. I saw those names earlier today written on the floor down in the basement, and I think I saw your daughter's name down there. It's not in the rest of the building, but it is at one spot in the building, which is one of the fun parts.
I think my name's in there too, actually.
Isn't that great?
Yeah. I left there in 81. So,
Oh,
or
wow.
1980. Yeah.
Yeah, we put together this little facility comparison matrix to kind of compare all the schools. And it's really, we kind of went through, and so green means that it exists or is it sufficient in size or condition. Yellow meaning it exists but could be either undersized or in poor condition. And then red meaning that it's either failed or doesn't exist at all.
And I'll just say for folks, there's no judgment in this. We sometimes get, some folks have reactions to this, and it's a reductive matrix, intentionally to sort of call out where the major programming differences are from building to building. So for what it is, it's useful in these discussions.
Yeah, just kind of a recap of costs. I think that's pretty much the end of our presentation. I can leave it here if anybody wants to kind of.
Did we benchmark the budgeting with the APPA? Is that
Yes.
slide
Right here, David?
Yeah. Do you want to walk through this slide?
Yeah, so this table is giving us basically replacement value, which is what we're using to calculate our FCI cost. So basically for an annual maintenance budget, so if you're adding up your maintenance budget and routine maintenance, it should really come to 3% of your annual budget, which is this number, this column here.
No, I'm sorry to jump in, Caleb, but it's 3% of current replacement value,
Okay.
as opposed to 3% of your. So, yeah, I'm sorry to cut you off, but it's the 1% and 2% add up to 3% of current replacement value, which is typically a lot more than what people are actually budgeting.
So yeah, this is the Association of Physical Plant Administrators. This is a reference that we got from the Agency of Education. They've been using this to sort of benchmark, and they're considering, one of the things they're concerned about is if there's going to be a school construction aid program, they want to make sure that whatever project is being developed, that the school district budgets adequately to take care of it. So into the future, this is something that Rhode Island does. Rhode Island looks at a school's maintenance budget when they're deciding to give money and negotiating all that. And so we thought it's a interesting and important benchmark to understand like what you're so according to this, you're budgeting 4.2. The APPA's recommendation is 10 million. So there's quite a gulf there. The next column where it says capital renewal, the 4% is really talking about like if you didn't bond, if you said we're never going to bond and we're just going to budget, then they're recommending you add another 4%, which is essentially, if you think about it, replacing 4% a year is like every 25 years you've completely renewed your facilities. Because 4 times 25 is 100. So it's kind of a hypothetical to say like if you decide not to bond, and you decide to just budget, then you have to add another 4% for a total of 7%. But what we know from the study that we did in the spring, when we did the cost modeling, is that bonding saves approximately 10% over the course of that 30 years. So it's, you know, that's when you're considering like which direction to go. And often what happens is, as I was mentioning earlier, is that, you know, you look at these, you know, this whole plethora of needs, and, you know, often what districts will decide to do is say, okay, this is the thing we're going to bond for, and these things we're going to budget for. You know, windows, we can do, you know, a facade a year, or carpeting, painting, whatever. We can do those, you know, on a yearly basis. But, you know, another project we're just never going to be able to budget for, so we need to bond for that. And I'm not saying that, you know, we're not trying to lead the district down any one path. We're just trying to explain how other districts have approached this.
And also, you kind of got at this point, David, but can you also just explain to the board the differences in the cost estimations from last spring to this study, and why this study is kind of more relevant to our current discussions?
Yeah, so in the spring, we didn't have this information. So what we used just some percentages of net replacement value to cover the deferred maintenance. So I don't know, Cam, if can you go back one slide, Caleb? So for the 73 million, sorry, the 121 million, the grand total there, we didn't have that number. So last spring, we just had to use a percentage of net replacement value based on the APPA recommendations. And we haven't gone back and looked to see whether this is much lower, much higher, but we'll now be able to take this number, plug it back into the cost model, and rerun those, and they'll be, you know, now they'll be more accurate because we're not using just a plug number like we did in the spring.
The numbers are lower than the ones we carried in the spring as a placeholder, just for what it's worth, which makes sense when you think about the school is in, these schools are in slightly better shape than the average that we see in Vermont. So it's kind of intuitive that way. But it's great to have these numbers, because now, because one of the key differences was in the spring, because we used a percentage, it was a very even wash. Buildings were all assumed to have a similar level of wear, and we can see from the report that that's not true. Some buildings are in better shape than others. So having that additional level of information gives you more options to be picky and choosy with how you approach repairs and other moves.
Well,
So
it's great to hear we're not the worst.
Right.
Yay. Woo.
Gives a little peace of mind. But yeah, I guess now's a good time. If any board members here have questions. Emily has raised her hand.
Yeah, so I guess first off, looking at the list and all the things that need to be improved across all of our schools, it is a little bit surprising to hear that it's actually not as bad as it could be. These are some pretty significant things that our schools are in need of. And I have two questions. The first question, I think they're both easy ones, but the first one is, you know, with regards to Facein being at that 49% for the FCI, it seems like then that's an indication that the recommended repairs might be a better investment of the community to actually replace those versus just patching them, given the state of what some of those recommendations are at, if I'm understanding that correctly, because it's at that 49% threshold.
When you, could you clarify the question? So when you say replacing, are you talking about replacing the building or replacing
No,
components of the building?
so looking at the slide on page 6, that Fayston's got the FCI score of 49%. There are the three priorities,
Right,
levels, and that the replacement cost, like to do all three of the priorities, is about
yeah,
7 million,
yeah.
but the replacement of all of those is 15 million, which I understand is double. But given the age and the condition of some of the things that are happening in that school, it seems like a recommendation could be to consider, should we be replacing these things versus just
Well,
fixing them? I just want to
yeah,
see if I'm
so
understanding this
let
right.
me clarify the 7 million is for replacing all of the items on the list. The 15 million is for replacing the building in
Oh,
total.
okay. Okay. So I
Yeah,
misunderstood that. Okay.
yeah. And
So glad.
what it doesn't include though is finding a site and a place to do it,
Okay.
because that's a wild card. We can't really put a number on. Yeah, so that's what those numbers mean.
Okay. I'm glad I asked that question then,
Yeah,
because
I am
I'm sure
glad. I'm glad
somebody,
too.
I'm sure others, members of the public might have thought the same thing. And
Yeah.
then the other question that I have is, in the priority ones across all of the elementary schools, there's a lot of code violations that are going on. So is there a concern that we could maybe not get insurance renewals, that we could get fined by the state if we don't address these things within a certain period of time, even though a lot of this stuff sounds like it's grandfathered from, X, Y, and Z. But is that a concern that we should be considering when thinking about some of these priority ones and code violations?
Cam, you want to take this one?
Yeah, sure. So the way it typically works is you're in a legally occupied building, and you typically don't have to meet or upgrade to current codes until you do work. And there's a chapter in the code book that deals with this specifically, but in a nutshell, once you start working on a building and you start to do repairs, especially if they're at all kind of widespread, like if you're working on many parts of the building at the same time, you end up getting inspectors, people from the state office of fire safety. They'll come out on a weekly basis. They'll be looking at your building, and they will then at that point require you to make the upgrades, because you'll need a new certificate of occupancy, and you will have to meet the codes that are in that apply today to those certain things. And it can be a little bit piecemeal, but generally code violations have to be upgraded as soon as you do a new construction project. So um, you're not, I don't think, in any danger of being shut down. To be honest, if there was something that was so important that it rose to the level of needing to be addressed right away, we would counsel you to just to take care of that right away, because it's a safety issue. So does that answer your question though? Ray, do you want to add something?
Yeah, I just want to say that we've had the state fire marshal in all of the buildings doing full inspections over the last 3 years, and he has not written up any significant concerns.
And that makes sense to me. It's kind of like when you do a construction project, right now they walk around your building, and would be a political nightmare to close a building down midstream. But once you do a construction project, they kind of put on their glasses or their code compliance glasses, and they say, well, you've got a chance now to make some improvements. So they expect you to do it.
Thanks, Cam.
Cindy?
Cindy?
Yeah, I just was wondering, there's a few things that show on every building. The wire doors is the one that just struck me the most. I think every building seemed to have wire doors. Is there things that we're going to be able to do where we get wire doors done in all our schools? and the economy of scale, something like that. There was the P drains on all those sinks, and they're just that I wondered if there's any economy of scale.
Great,
for us.
great. That's a great question. Is there efficiency if we buy doors for all the schools? You know, is that, I don't know, Kim's not sure.
It's
Yeah,
possible. I mean,
yeah, there's always economies of, that usually the general rule is, the more like a project becomes more attractive, they get better pricing when they do volume, and a contractor, you get more contractors bidding, more subcontractors bidding, and but it really does depend because, it could be, if you're doing, let's say, just Brookside and there's a lot of doors, you might get the economy scale that way just by doing one building, but doing all the doors as opposed to doing all certain kinds of doors across 7 buildings. So it really depends.
yeah, because you also pay for mobilizations. So if you got 50 doors in one building and 2 doors in another, you pay more because you have to pay for that mobilization at the building with very little scope. So it can go both ways.
Any other questions from board members? No, okay.
Can I ask one
Yep.
question?
Please, Steve.
I've been typing like crazy. Should we just, I find this FCI figure a little confusing because it's maintenance costs versus replacing the whole school. But unless the FCI is very high, then shouldn't we just be going the replacement, the maintenance route? Am I missing something?
No, that's absolutely right. It's this, for example, the state, when I was on the 2023 task force, and the report was to consider, whether you would, the state was using 65 or 66%, 2/3 depletion, an FCI of that amount, they would start to question whether they'd even invest in that property, because it's sort of the old car dilemma, right? At what point do you keep putting money into your old car or truck? And at what point do you invest in a new one? And it's interesting because there's a lot of consistency with the FCI ratings of, the 30%, 20%, all that. And I've done research to try and find out if there's any organization that says, like, when should you replace a building, at what FCI, and you cannot find that anywhere. Nobody will touch that. We've heard 70%, we've heard 65%. The Navy, US Navy uses 50% as their benchmark, but it's a very much a judgment call. But at 4%, 19%, the kind of numbers we're seeing here, yeah, the reinvesting in the facility is the logical move.
What
Well,
about at 40%? Is it still logical? I mean, I see that Harwood is
The judgment call, Ashley, it's
Right.
a cultural question. It could be different in different demographics. Different communities of people will feel differently about this. The one thing I'll say is that you can make a judgment one way or the other. There is a point at which it doesn't make sense anymore. I often will use the analogy of putting airbags in a 1957 Buick. Could you do it? Sure. Would it look weird in that steering wheel? Definitely. So it's if your buildings are not in terrible shape, I think there's a great case to be made to fix them. But we work with some districts who have multiple buildings over 50%, some with buildings over 80% FCI. And in those cases, there's more conversation about replacement as a strategy, because at some point it doesn't make sense to keep investing in those buildings, especially with the other gains you get from replacement. You're not in that camp.
Yeah, one factor that one thing that factors in, and I think Dr. Mike, you probably you've lived through this in your previous district, and we experienced at Winooski, is that when you do a massive renovation, of a project, and additions or whatever complicated project, it's very difficult for the people in the building to continue teaching, because they're constantly being moved. There's construction around them. It's very disruptive. It takes a long time, and it's and that's a factor that districts will consider. Like, they call it flip-flopping sometimes, but where a district will decide to build a project in the playing fields that they have, and then when it's done, you just move the kids over, and then you take the existing building down and turn that back into the playing fields. And not in Vermont, it's very uncommon. In fact, I've never even heard of it in Vermont, but in other states, it's pretty common. And so those are that's a factor that people consider when considering complex, expensive renovations and additions. But it's like I said, it's very unusual in Vermont.
Well, and David's comments are exactly my experience. And what I would say is it's also hard because David and Cam and Caleb live in the world of not just architecture, but compliance, legal compliance, zone compliance. So I think of my last high school and my last home. The bathroom in my last home was built in the 1950s. So my wife and I decided to replace it. We went in, we gutted it, we rebuilt it, everything was fine. We had a similar circumstance in the bathroom in the high school that was close to the auditorium. I had a board that said, this is really antiquated. We should replace it. We should do something different. It looks horrible when we have parents come in. It's not serviceable anymore. The parts are old. So the board said, let's go ahead and renovate it. And what we realized is because it was a public building, and that's the key, it was a public building and it had to comply with the codes. There was not enough distance between the toilet stalls and the sinks under ADA regulations. So that project that should have taken 6 weeks took months and months and months, and inspection upon inspection from the code inspector who said, this does not meet the legal requirements. So that's how you end up with a project that requires more space, requires a new building, requires replacement, because you can't fit what we would like to have as people living in the year 2025 with what the legal requirements are in a public building, which is a public school. Did I say that? Did that make sense, David?
Yeah.
Very well said. These repairs are very expensive, especially compared to what people might experience in residential construction, and it is for that reason. Also, the safety factor of working in schools, contractors have to build that in because they have to get, background checks and have to keep separate, and it's time consuming and all that. So yeah, it's a great point.
And I think we saw that this summer, and it was Steve Rosenberg who pointed out to me, like the people in the community who said, why are we replacing the parking lot at the high school? Well, the parking lot was replaced because the state of Vermont has the 3-acre rule that if you have more than 3 acres of impervious surface, you have to have stormwater. And that led to a very expensive project. Fortunately, the state was willing to pay 90% of that, but we as a school district are a public facility, so we have to comply with those rules and regulations that the state passes for a modern facility. So I think that's a good example. We just didn't want to replace the parking lot. We had to do some work. And once we put the backhoe in the ground and started digging, we had to comply with all of those legal regulations.
Did anybody else here in the board members have any questions for Truex?
Well, I guess it's not really a question, just thinking about that, we have to, sounds like we need to put under very careful consideration when we're thinking about some of the improvements that our recommendations say, like priority 1 or even priority 2. We need to be prepared that there could be unexpected obstacles that happen. Mike, when you were talking about the bathroom example in your last school, I was thinking about the bathroom right across at Harwood, right across from the auditorium, or the gym rather, which I think that's original. Like that right there, if you try to do anything to fix that up, and I remember it being outdated when I was there in high school, so it's definitely outdated now. That's not going to be an easy. That's an example of something that would probably quite quickly snowball, and potentially several of the other recommendations in the priorities, and especially some of the structural ones, like some of the stuff we saw that's happening at Brookside, and the stuff at Facein. So those are definitely things to consider. They need to happen, but there's unexpected setbacks that could happen as well.
Sure.
With this
Yeah.
many buildings this old, I mean, anything could be the can of worms we don't expect. In fact, I'm sure there's contingencies that we'll be building into,
Yep.
be prepared for that.
And I guess the last thing that I'll say is, as far as student disruption, I mean, I remember the last major renovation at Harwood. I was a student there, and I remember multiple classes in those portable trailers.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the next step, it's a good point, Emily, and in fact, the numbers for Harwood, you'll see they're very large numbers, partly because the original core of that building is over 60 years old now. And that includes all that infrastructure, all that under slab piping and everything. And we know that some of it's in poor condition. I'll just say for folks, the next step is really kind of with this information. As David said, it's a snapshot in time. The next step is really for the district to take ownership of it, and either with help or on their own, to turn this into like a capital improvement plan where you can start looking at some of these items, grouping them up, looking at when they need to be done by, planning ahead. Some of these could be combined into projects that make sense, and you can plan for and add contingencies for those eventualities. And that's really the utility of the information, that it can become a living document that helps you plan and organize your approach to maintenance. So I just wanted to offer that.
Yeah, and I think, we had originally, if you recall, there were three components to our original proposal. There was the configuration options, there was the facility evaluation, and then there was what we call concept design. And so we've now completed phase 1 and phase 2, and so that's another aspect of this. So in our proposal, what we had contemplated doing or proposed doing was, with this information, and we had developed various options, district-wide options would be, and what other districts have done is they've picked the top 3 that look like the provide the best strategic direction, and we've actually developed some designs for those at a very high concept level, and then had cost estimates done by a professional cost estimator, and then rerun, do that, and then rerun the cost models so that you have a more accurate picture of what the cost impact of these different options are. And so that just, when you're ready, be happy to work with you on doing that if that's the choice. But I'm just offering it as a reminder of where
Phase
we
3.
left off. Yeah,
Sure.
where phase 3 was.
Well, that's a great segue into the next on the agenda, which is next step. So I appreciate that, looking at incorporating this information into a capital improvement plan. And I guess Ashley, Steve, Cindy, what are your thoughts on how you would like to take this information from here? Do we have a desire to have Truax come back with a presentation to the full board before thinking about the path forward from here?
That's a good question. Do we need a presentation to the whole board? Probably we do, yeah.
I think it would be, it doesn't, and I think we got a lot of meat done here in about a half hour, and I think if Truex was amenable, I think that's important.
I do
Okay.
too. I think it would be good to have it open to the whole board for more questions.
Mhm.
I think that would be helpful. I think that's our next step. Personally, I think our next step is take it to the whole board. And then be hoping to hear some more public comment. You know, I'm hoping to get a little more from the public. I know that a lot of people have concerns about the expense of things, and I hope that people will remember that what we are looking at today is in today's dollars, and we have to remember that if we kick things down the road, they get more expensive. And I know we're all aware of that. So yes, I think if Truex is amenable, we'd like to have you guys back to give a presentation to the board.
And I would suggest, I just know Steve has put out some information and really wants to do a good job of advertising this to the public. I know that our 2 local newspapers are also very engaged in making sure that our public is aware. So we have a meeting next Wednesday, but I think just for transparency purposes, it's just too soon. If we could do something on maybe October 22nd, that gives Truex Collins time to prepare, but it also gives us, through all, whether it's our local media, but also the communications committee, enough time to publicize this so our community is aware that this is being discussed, and we have plenty of time because I would like to see dozens of people who are tuning in to listen to this and to give comment to the board on what should be the next step.
Me too.
Absolutely. And I think if those who are on tonight from the public have follow-up questions from this meeting, I encourage you to email the full board or attend our upcoming meetings. I guess I have one question. I think after the initial phase of this entire project, the board, the committee came up with a grouping of options to further take a further dive into. And I guess my question is to Truex here. How much do you think with this current information, these facility assessments, how much of an effect, if any, would that have on those initial proposals that we, I think maybe there was 20, we narrowed it down to 5 or 6. Do you think they're still in the same ballpark? Do you think there's any dramatic effect on those initial proposals as we saw them?
Well, I'd prefer to run the numbers rather than risk a guess.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Is that something that's kind of where I was going, and I appreciate that. Is that something that can be done in advance of when we have you at the board meeting? Is that something, do we want to have you present to the full board and then maybe do that work and we take it into this committee again? And what would you suggest? What
You
works
mean
best for
like
you?
rerun the numbers with this new information,
Yes.
but without going to the next, without initiating phase 3 is what you're
Correct.
saying?
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, that could be done for sure. It's my overall sense is that the I don't think there's going to be a big difference, and I'm thin ice here, but that the overall difference between the options is not going to alter significantly, but I think that the total cost savings may go down just because the deferred maintenance numbers are lower than what we carried. Now, how much they go down, I don't know, but that's my general sense. But with if we're talking about from the
Maybe a little bit of
22nd,
sorry.
Go ahead, Cam.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I think there might be a little bit of stretching too. As I said earlier, we used a multiplier from APPA to estimate deferred maintenance, and it was even across all the buildings. And now that some buildings are higher and some are lower, some of the options, there may be some stretching. And then maybe, some may have more daylight between them. I'm sorry if I'm speaking in metaphor. But like I said, don't want to hazard a guess without running the numbers.
Sure, I appreciate that. I just, in a perfect world, I wouldn't want the the narrowing down of options to have been, to be kind of undermined by some updated assessments and some
Right.
updated numbers. So I think it's really important that if this committee is going to come down to 5, 3, 4, 5, 6 options,
Right.
that they be the right ones.
Yeah, I think that, I don't think that would be, it shouldn't be too complicated to put in, now that we have this new information, to just drop those in to the cost model and see what comes out.
Okay, and maybe I would just so we'll we can plan on you all coming to the full board,
Yeah.
taking questions from them, and then if seeing what the board wants as the majority of the board would like to see, we can choose that road ahead, whether it's
Choose a road, some
Choose a
road
road.
ahead
Yes.
that gets work done.
Yes,
Something that we are, I mean, we all know that this is a screwy time to try to make plans
Mhm.
because we're not sure what happens if with redistricting and with possible aid from the state, although I'm certainly not holding my breath for that for construction aid.
Mhm.
But we cannot stop supporting our own schools. I completely agree with what Dr. Mike said earlier about our schools are about people and students and learning and all these amazing things going on. We should be able to come to some agreement, I'm hoping, in the very near future about how we are going to press on. So I am anxious to involve more of the public, and I'm excited to have the board look at this presentation and look at this meeting we're having right now, and then come to our meeting hopefully with more questions and more input, because we do need to pick some paths. We need to pick some places where we're going to work on some projects. I think that's legit, and how we're going to fund that and how we're going to do that has a ton of pieces attached. So,
Absolutely. Yep.
so I think for me, the next phase really is to have these guys. Are you guys free on the 22nd? Could you you can Zoom or
Yep.
come? It's up to you.
Yep.
And that's a full board meeting. So, and Dr. Mike will be away at the one to come. So I would prefer waiting myself till the 22nd.
Yeah. No, I'm available for sure.
Thanks.
Yeah. Okay.
Steve, did you have something?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask if the committee members feel that there's something they should be doing between now and the 22nd. It's, it's 3 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what I would say is I think there are the bigger, but we need to look deeper at these. They have when you said, Dave, there's the more comprehensive report on each of these little teeny tiny items that's going to come to us at some point, or is that down the line a bit?
I
mean,
guess I would have to ask Caleb. Caleb has been the prime mover of that, and I'll confer with him about when that'll be ready.
I mean, honestly, what we have now is definitely enough for the board to look at and to sort of get their head around it, I think. I mean, you don't need to know how many screws and pencils and whatnot you need. That's not what I mean. More like if there's more info, obviously we'll want to look at that. But I think for the board, what we have in front of us, I will encourage everyone to really dig into. That's my piece.
Yeah. I think this is a more digestible format. The report is also digestible, but it's a bigger meal.
Yep. All right. So
I guess I would suggest that just for other committee members, to answer your question, Steve, I think using this report, maybe going back into the planning options that were offered, that were submitted last year through the Truex work, and maybe just kind of revisiting those options with this body of work in mind might be a good first step too in advance of the 22nd.
Yeah.
Yes.
I do have one request. I'm sorry, JB. Thought I caught a good moment to jump in. I do have one request of folks, and this is both for folks at the school, on the board, in the committee, and even people who are listening in the public. If you have questions about the information that you're seeing, please funnel your questions through Dr. Mike or whoever he appoints to be that person just so that we're not in a position of having to respond directly to folks or be outside of the chain of command, so to
Yeah.
speak.
Mhm.
Because we know there's a lot of information here. Some of it is challenging and unfamiliar, and so we want to be able to support folks in getting the answers they need, but we just want to make sure we're going through the right channels.
Yeah.
Thanks, Kate. We appreciate all the work that you've done, and as far as the public here, I just want to make sure that we have the district has hired you on to do this work, and you know you're looking at this, you're doing this through an absolute neutral lens, and so I remind the public that to keep that in mind when they look at this.
That's a great piece of information. I agree with that.
And I,
Truex
you
is
know,
our-
my
is our
goal with this committee
partner.
is we don't know what's coming down the pipe with the state. If we can work as much with Truex, with the public, to come up with some paths forward when things get difficult in the coming years, and have that at the ready, then I think we've done our job. So that's my goal.
Planning. We need
Planning.
more planning.
That's what I do.
Cam loves planning, don't you, Cam? It's your fave.
And for those members of the public, we didn't get a chance to hear your questions. Please send them on to the board. We will have another committee meeting certainly, and at that point, it'd be nice to have more time open for public comment. Of course, there's always the school board as well. This is going to be an absolute collaborative process with the residents and
But
so.
for the public, I think JB, they should send, if there are questions related to this presentation, they should send them to Mike? And
Nice.
then,
Mike, you have.
is that okay, Mike?
What I'll do is I'll come up with a full document. Anything I get from the public, from the
Perfect.
board, from anyone here, I'll put it in one single document and then I'll share it out.
Yeah, that sounds like a plan.
Yep. Great. We're gonna do this together. That's the bottom line.
By hook or by crook, we're gonna do this together.
And also, I do want to echo something that David said at the beginning, and I want to thank Ray and his staff of all the facility directors in each of the schools who do a wonderful job every day to keep our buildings in great shape for our kids. When you walk into the schools, like I said, those pictures of the work to be done, you don't see that. You see a good place with kids who are working well and teachers who are doing a great job working with our students.
Ray gets a shout out from me too. This is a hell of a load you've been holding up a long time. I swear to God, we're gonna get something done. I swear, it's happening. He's just stoic, as you.
So stoic. So stoic. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. I guess I'll be looking. It's almost 7:30. It's just about 7:30. But looking for a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion.
Excellent.
Do we have a second?
Steve?
I'll second.
Second.
Emily second.
Perfect. All in favor?
Aye.
Thanks,
Perfect.
everybody. Thanks,
Thank you, everybody,
Truex
for coming.
guys. We appreciate
night.
you. All right.
Night, everybody.
Take care.